Cronica Walliae is a manuscript of chronological history by Humphrey Llwyd written in 1559. Llwyd translated versions of a medieval text about Wales's history, Brut y Tywysogion, from Welsh and Medieval Latin into English. He also added historical material from Matthew Paris and Nicholas Trivet, as well as from other well-known historians. It is the first history of Wales written in English and contains material about ancient rulers, with some material based on legends. Llwyd's work gives a history description of Wales that was originally written in the early part of the 16th century by Sir John Pryce of Brecknockshire, Wales. History. This manuscript is Llwyd's earliest and largest work. It is his only surviving work, and describes in detail the lives of Welsh nobility from Cadwallader Fendigade to Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, and covers from the mid-7th century to the 14th century. Llwyd says his main source was the Welsh Chronicle, implicating Caradoc of Llancarfan of the 12th century. His work is based on three different versions of the Chronicle of Caradoc that generally became known as Brut y Tywysogion, or the Brut of the Princes. Llwyd relied heavily on material from the writings of Matthew Paris, as he is talked about more than any other historian that he used for reference. Llwyd used much historical material from Matthew Paris's Chronica Majora and Historia Anglorum. According to C.P. Lewis, Llwyd's aim was to show the Welsh had their own history and were an ancient people descended from the Trojans. He summed up his work as the perfect description of the country as his was in oldie time and as his is at these days, to give the idea that it was a historical work. In 1573, David Powel took over the task of preparing Llwyd's manuscript for publication, upon which John Dee had been working before leaving England. Powell expanded Llwyd's work in its scope and detail, with the help of Lord Burleigh providing access to some further documents, making his own contributions clear by typographical distinctions. The resulting publication in 1584, the History of Cambria, now called Wales, was the first printed history of Wales. The work remained an important source for medieval Welsh history for several centuries thereafter. It is the earliest extant written version of the history. It popularized the legend that Prince Madoc had discovered America in about 1170, a tale used to justify English encroachments on the territory of Spanish America. Dee, in particular, was influenced by Llwyd's claims and advised Queen Elizabeth I to make this new land a British Empire. Llwyd's work was again edited and published by Robert Vaughan of English.It and later again by William Morris of Cefn Wybreach. These later copies were the basis for the 1697 publication of History of Wales that was augmented and improved by William Wynne the historian. A reprint of Powell's book of Llwyd's work was published in 1811. For centuries, Llwyd's original work had been known to scholars only from 5 surviving manuscripts. In 2002, University of Wales Press published a version of the original manuscript with the title Cronica Walliae. It was prepared mainly by Professor Ewan M. Williams, and established from the surviving manuscripts. The book, Cronica Walliae by the University of Wales, was published by the History and Law Committee consisting of several scholars. Description: the 2002 commentary book, Cronica Walliae by the University of Wales, says the full Latin title of Cronica Walliae Reg Cadwallader ad annum 1294 in English translates approximately as Chronicle of Wales as a sequential chronological history record of events of Wales from Prince Cadwallader to the year 1294. It says there are 5 known manuscript copies of Llwyd's work, none in his personal handwriting. MS1 BL, Cotton Caligula MS Avi. To historians that wrote on Llwyd, this was the best-known text. It is preceded by colophon done by Sir Robert Cotton, Cronica Walliae reg Cadwallader at 1294. Humphrey Llwyd Llwyd gave the title Cronica Walliae. That LLWD's text is known by MS2 Bodleian Library, Ashmole MS. 847. This is a copy of MS1 above that was done by Robert Glover around 1578. The note on the title page says, this book was given to Mr. J.D. of Mortlake by his cousin Mr. Humphrey Llwyd of the Welsh Powel 1575, MS3 BL Mississippi, 48090 FF, 4-105 V. This is a handwritten copy of the Bodleian Library MS2 manuscript. MS4 NLW, Llanstefan MS 177. This edition has no title. It has a treatise called Cyfrinic Wyberth, and the note John ap D. Apar, Setok Position upon theirs day being the XXJTH of MAJJ the 15-year of the reign of our Queen Elizabeth 1573 in the hand of Ewan ap Dav ap Jancanthes being Witless Griffith Meccan, John ap Owen, Griffith ap Hall, Robert ap John Rondell, Thomas Hurlard. The manuscript is complete except for a small part related to Alfred, MS5 NLW 23202b. This manuscript was purchased from the Thomas Fairfax collection by the National Library of Wales in 1993. It is preceded by a colophon text later than the manuscript itself. It has an intricate signature with text by Powel, the original autograph. The signature says, though, Powell, there are parts missing, deliberately left out by the copyist, that especially relate to events outside Wales. There are also parts left out related to the Church and the papacy. Missing two are sections related to Polydor, Virgil and other Welsh links. Because of the missing parts, it is not relied on for a Llwyd reference source. Commentary. The commentary book shows Llwyd starting his chronology of sequential records of Wales with Prince Cadwallader of the 7th century. The first thing he explains is that he is the last British king to rule Wales, descending from the noble race of Trojans. He explains the devastating plagues that happened during his reign. He explains that the Britons had been ruled by different kings and princes for 1,817 years up to Cadwallader. Llwyd says Cadwallader went to Rome for 5 years to study different philosophers and that he died in 688 AD. He then explains in Yvo are the son of Alan, Ina de Stirpe Regia Filius Kenredi Sorori Regis Cadwaladri. The next sequence of events that while he was in Rome, according to the commandment received by the angel, he left his son Idwrch, his sister and his people with Alan, king of Little Britain. Llwyd then explains that the son of Idwrch, Rhodri Molwynog, became the ruler of the kingdom of Gwynedd. He explains in Roderic the son of Idwal the son of Cadwallader that Rhodri began his reign in the year 720. Also, in this section he details the Battle of Pencon and the Battle of Heffiel. Llwyd also talks about the Battle of Carno Mountain in 728 c. 8th century wars. In this section he also talks about the ecclesiastical history of the English people being finished in 731 that was written by a great clerker that wrote a many walks named Bede from Monkwearmouth. He says the priest Bede died in 733 AD. He then talks about Swaybit of Essex and Syed of Essex. He also describes Battle Edge where King Ethelbald of Mercia was defeated by King Cuthred. Llwyd then talks about King Rhodri Molwynog and that he died in 754 and left his son Gwynand Tindithwe to rule afterwards. Llwyd then goes into the next section, Gwynand Tindithwe son to Roderic, beginning with the year 755. He details the Battle of Cenfabrat where Dyfynwal the son of Teudwr was slain. See Cathathsach Mac a Tersheli. Llwyd records that Ethelbald of Mercia died in the year 757. He explains then that Bjorn of Mercia succeed him. He then shows the next important event in 758 when Elfod, a Welsh bishop both godly and learned, induced the standard for determining the date of Easter. Llwyd then details in his history the events of the year 763. He begins with Offa of Mercia becoming king and Hebert of Kent made king of West Saxons. He later explains the Battle of Otford that took place in 776. Llwyd then gives specifics for the well-known ditch Offa had built. He describes it as a great ditch large and deep made between Mercia and Powys from sea to sea. In the 16th century it was referred to as Clwyd Offa and Offa's Ditch. The reason he built the ditch was for protection to defend his country from the incursions of the Welshmen. Llwyd then spells out the next important event as being in the year of our Lord 800 when Egbert of Wessex was made king, and the following year, Coenwulf of Mercia was made king. He says the next important event of history was when Cadwal ap Brocfael, the king of Powys, died in 808 and his son Singan ap Cadwal became the new king. Llwyd notes the next interesting event was a solar eclipse on Christmas Day in 810, and at the same time there was an unusually large death rate of cattle in Wales. He notes also that this was the year that St. David's Cathedral was burnt by the West Saxons. Llwyd then records the death of Owain ap Maredudd. He then shows us the next dramatic event in 812 when Dyganwy Castle was struck by lightning and destroyed. Llwyd records as events under the section Blethan ap Cynfyn and Meredith ap Owen that in 1073 Blethan ap Cynfyn was traitorously and cowardly murdered by Rhys ab Owain after he reigned Wales for 13 years. Under the section Griffith the son of Cynan, Llwyd records as historical events how peacefully after the death of Trafherne ap Caradog in 1081, Gruffydd ap Cynan ruled North Wales and Rhys ap Tewdwr ruled South Wales. He records the history that led up to this time. One of the events he describes is the murder of William Walcher in 1080. He describes in detail how the Northumbrians killed him and his 100 men that accompanied him. Later in this section Llwyd records the historical event of 1125 when Cadwallon ap Griffith killed his maternal uncles to capture the district Dyffryn Clwyd. Under the section Owen Gwyneth's on to Griffith ap Cynan, Llwyd records as sequential historical events how the sons of Gruffydd ap Cynan divided up the kingdoms of Wales according to custom after his death in 1137 AD. Llwyd explains here how Owain Gwynedd is the first to be styled Prince of Wales starting in 1137 and that the name King is no longer used in British records when referring to the ruler of Wales. Llwyd then describes in his recordings that in the year 1146 Cadwallon ap Madog captured his younger brother Eonclad and turned him over to King Owain Gwynedd, who in turn handed him over to Henry II to be imprisoned at Winchester. He then explains how Madog soon escapes and goes back to Wales. Llwyd reports also in this section the information that in 1160 Madog ap Maredudd died. Llwyd then chronicles that in 1165 Dafod ap Owain Gwynedd destroyed Tyngell, which at the time belonged to King Henry, and he took all the people and the possessions to the valley of Clwyd. He then describes the 1169 death of Owain Gwynedd after controlling North Wales for 32 years. The next sequence of events he details gives an accounting of the turmoil this caused among his many children over the inheritance. He follows this up in the next section of the events that happened in the 1170s. In the section, David the son of Owain Gwynedd Llwyd read that after the death of Owain his sons fell a debate who shall inherit after him. The eldest son born in matrimony, Edward or Erworth Drindone, was counted unmeet for his maimie upon his face, and Howell who took upon him all the rule was a base son begotten upon an Irishwoman. Therefore David gathered all the power he could, and came against Howell, and fought with him and slew him, and afterward enjoyed quietly the whole land of North Wales, until his brother Iorwerth or Edward's son came to age as shall hereafter appear. And at this time and other of Owain Gwyned's sons, named Madog, left the land in contention betwixt his brethren, and prepared certain ships, with men munition, and sought adventures by the seas, and sailed west Levenge the coast of Ireland northward. He came to a land unknown, and where he saw many strange things, and this land most needs be some party of that land, the which the Hispaniards affirm themselves to be the first finders, sith Hannah's time. For by reason and order of cosmography this land to which Madog came to most needs be some part of Nova Hispania or Florida, and say it was by Britain's lunge afore discovered before either colonists or Americans lead any Hispaniards thither. Peter Roberts noted that according to Dr. John D., the Tudors had inherited a historic claim to the newfound lands in the West, first through King Arthur and then through Prince Madog. It was Humphrey Llwyd who, in his Cronica Walliae, first publicized the legend that the Welsh Prince Madog ab Owain Gwynedd had sailed across the Atlantic and discovered America. A return trip to Wales by Madog and a second trip with a number of ships are additionally detailed by Llwyd. Llwyd describes historical events for the year 1170 saying, "But to my history, about the same time, e.g., the prearranged marriage of Eleanor of England, Queen of Castile, to King Alfonso VIII of Castile, Owain Saifiliog's land grant for the founding of the Abbey of Strata Marcella, Richard Strongbow's taking of the towns of Dublin and Waterford with the King of Leinster, and Prince Rhys ap Grufford's payments to King Henry II of 300 horses and 4,000 cattle, and the 7th of October 1170 meeting with King Henry." Llwyd then explains the November 1170 conspiracy to kill Archbishop Thomas Becket, which happened then right after Christmas of the same year. He names William de Tracy, Richard Le Breton, and Reginald Fitzurse as 3 of the 4 knights that did the murder. Llwyd then gives the chronological historical events going from 1171 and going into 1172. He records the events of King Henry II visiting London in 1172 on his return from Ireland and made peace with Prince Rhys. He then describes the La Charter that was made between them at this time. Llwyd then records the traitorous and cowardly 1174 murder of Iorwerth Drindone. He then gives us a summary how Dafod ab Owain Gwynedd in the same year imprisons his brother Rhodri and puts him in shackles to take away his inherited lands. Llwyd then states as the next sequence of events how in 1175 Howell, son of Iorwerth, takes Owain Pencairn prisoner, pokes out his eyes and castrates him. He references this back to the history records of Matthew Paris. Llwyd then explains that in 1176 William II of Sicily married Joan, the daughter of King Henry II. Llwyd then notes the records that in 1179 King Henry II of England bought a county of La Marche in France for 6,000 of silver and put Hubert de Burgh, 1st Earl of Kent, in charge of it. Llwyd's manuscript contains a report regarding an alleged 1179 discovery at Glastonbury Abbey at the island of Avalon of the burial place of King Arthur and his wife. He describes it as located 15 feet down in the ground in an elder tree trunk coffin with a cross of lead. It is referenced to Matthew Paris as being recorded about 10 years after the discovery. The inscription on the cross was recorded to be Llwyd details the bones found as Mervalaus Biganus and the probable cause of Arthur's death. He further describes the Queen's hair as being blonde. He records that clues to King Arthur's burial location were found because of a poem of a bard that King Henry II heard at Pembroke Castle. Llwyd then in a chronological sequence shows the year 1182 as that when Henry, Duke of Saxony, was exiled from Germany and stayed with King Henry II, his father-in-law, in Normandy. In 1184 is born a son, later to be called William of Winchester, Lord of Lunenburg. He also lists 1183 as the year Henry the young king died. Llwyd then tells of the murder of Hugh de Lacy, Lord of Meath, in 1186, and Prince John is sent over to Ireland to take possession of his lands and returns at Christmas. The year 1186 is also the time Llwyd lists as when Geoffrey II, Duke of Brittany, dies, leaving behind a daughter and a wife pregnant with the future Arthur, Duke of Brittany. He references these 1180s events back to the historian Matthew Paris. Llwyd then talks about the year 1187 as being the time when Owain Brogenton was murdered at Carreg-Senan Castle. This same year Llwyd shows of when Maelgwn ap Rhys for the first time appears in the historical record, bringing his power against Tenbian by brute force took the town, burning it down. He then shows the next important time as 1189, being the time when Henry II of England died. He explains then his son Richard becomes King of England. This same year Llwyd explains as being when Rhys ap Griffith captured the castles of St. Clears, Larne and Llanstefan. He further explains that this is when Lord Rhys' son Maelgwn is taken prisoner. Llwyd goes on to say this is when Richard I of England was officially made Bishop of Durham and Duke of Normandy. Llwyd then points out that Richard was captured in 1192 near Vienna by Leopold V, Duke of Austria, who turns him over to Henry the Emperor that asked for a 20,000 mark ransom. Llwyd then writes about what historian Nicholas Trivet recorded for the year 1270. He talks about Llywelyn ap Gruffydd and Gruffydd ap Madog, Lord of Bromfield. He then ends his manuscript in 1295 with the history of Madog ap Llywelyn and a battle of Maes Moedog. He claims then that there was nothing worthy done in Wales after this that otherwise could not be read in the English Chronicle.